You said in an interview for The Guardian, it was in the 90s, that you have your hatred inside of a trunk.
Yeah, I think it was just, that was to do with the period of the fatwa, and my feeling is that in the same way that fear is a way of paralyzing you, if you, anger also is a way of paralyzing you, and in a way, if you give in to it, then the event or the people or whatever that have made you angry, they have won a victory really, because they have come to define you. So it seemed to me that the way to proceed and survive, if you like, was to put I mean, I'm a human being, if I'm quite entirely capable of being angry, especially when somebody's done something to me which justifies anger, but I was very determined not to become the creature of that event, and as a result, reactions like fear and anger were destructive of me, and so I had to find a way of, putting them in a box and locking them up.
So fear and anger are in the same trunk?
They're neighbors, maybe in separate compartments.
Where do you have the key? Did you throw away the key?
I threw away the key, yeah. I threw away the trunk also.
You wrote Fury, and you're a fan of the New York Yankees.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what's your relationship with New York?
Oh, I always loved New York. I mean, that's long before I lived there. I mean, I went to New York for the first time when I was very young, when I was 24 or something, and so my relationship with it is quite an old one. I mean, I've only had a place there for 10 years now, but I've had a relationship with the city, for almost 40 years, and I have very old friendships. I have quite a long narrative in New York of my own, I always thought, as a young man too, I thought this is a place I would like to just come and sit here and see what happens to me, and I felt creatively that it would be a good thing, a good move for me, at some point, I wasn't certain when, but I just had an instinct that there was an attraction there, and then for a long time, because of the years of the fatwa, it wasn't possible for me to make such choices, and then when it became possible again, I just thought, well, I'm not getting any younger, so if I'm ever going to do this, I should do it, and so I did it, and it's been very productive. I mean, one of the things people don't say about New York very often is that it's a town of very hardworking people. People get up in the morning, go to work very early, and they stay at work very late, and it's a real workaholic town, and as a result, it's a very good city to work in, because everyone around you is working very hard, and in that climate, it's easy to also be one of the people who works very hard, and I've loved it for that. I write very well in New York.
Are you working on a new book now?
No, what I did after finishing Luca is that I've been writing the screenplay for Midnight's Children that we're going to film next year. So that is now finished. So today I'm unemployed. I have to think about what the next project is.
Are you thinking about signing with a different publishing house?
You mean in
yeah, because your contract in the United States.
Oh yes, it's finished. Well, I mean, truthfully, no, I'm not thinking about it at all. But because that contract was signed in advance, and it was, I think, in retrospect, I would have preferred not to sign a 5-book deal in advance, because your editors change and things like that, and you're just stuck there. So now I think I don't need to do that, and I'd sooner, frankly, write the book and then see who will publish it. But no, I'm pretty happy with Random House. I mean, I don't see any particular reason to move.
Your work is about the East and West a lot. I wanted to ask you, how did this relationship evolve in your work? Where are you now?
Yes. The answer is it's not a straight line. It goes back and forth. I mean, there have been moments in my life when I've thought, maybe I've written too much about India, I should write about something else. And then immediately the next book I think of has a very strong Indian component. I think it'll always be a kind of journey back and forth for me. I do think that there are things that I want to write about which are purely Western, which have nothing to do with India, and maybe at this particular moment, one or two of those ideas are uppermost in my mind. But India has been an enormous inspiration for me, and more than anywhere else, you know. And I go back all the time, and I never know what's going to happen to me. But usually, every time I go to India, I come back full of stories. So I don't know. But the answer is, I quite like having the two possibilities. You know, sometimes the West, sometimes the East. Usually, the two encountering each other somehow.
Also, I think 2 years ago, Aravind Adinga got the Booker Prize for The White Lion, and his
White Tiger, yeah.
The White Tiger, and he also talks about the East in his book. And I wanted to ask you if the East is very appealing in terms of marketing for selling a book. I mean, is it more appealing now?
I mean, truthfully, I never think about marketing. It's just a question of no interest to me. I mean, you know, I'm lucky in that at an early age I acquired quite a wide readership. You know, that was just, I never expected it. I always thought that my kind of writing might have quite a small readership. So I was wonderfully surprised to discover that it actually had a wide readership, which made it possible for me to be financially independent as a writer. You know, now, happily, that has gone on ever since. You know, so now I'm in the position of not having to think about selling the damn book. You know, I mean, I just write it. Somebody else's job to sell it.
You have very impressive public readings, I heard. So,
Oh.
I mean, people react very well when you read in public.
I think some writers can read and some writers can't, you know. I think it's because what you were asking me before, because a little bit of me is a frustrated actor. And these days the only performances I could give are of my own work. So you have to tell me after the reading here.
Do you read to your family while you're writing a book, or do
no, I don't show it. I don't show it while I'm writing it. Or at least that's not completely true. I usually don't show it. But for instance, in the case of Luca, and in the case of Harun, I didn't show all of it. I showed like the early parts to my two sons, just because I wanted to make sure that I was on the right track. You know, I mean, if they had said, no, I don't like this story, then I would have been very upset, but I would have had to think again, you know. And so, yeah, I did. Also, in the case of Luca, I showed the first couple of, well, the first 2.5 chapters or so, I showed it. And also, there was one thing I was worried about, is that there's one of the characters in Luca who's kind of the villain, and he's quite scary. And I think children like to be scared, but they like to be scared in a good way, you know, and not in a disturbing way, you know. And I wasn't sure if I was on the right side of that line, you know. So I wanted to find out. So I gave it to my son Milan to read, and I said, I didn't tell him anything. I just read it, you know. And to my enormous surprise, really, the character that I was worried about turned out to be his favorite character. And that showed me something. It showed me that, first of all, I was okay, I was on the right side of the line. And secondly, that he clearly is a child who quite likes dark material. So that was also a sort of liberation.
Do you have expectations from your visit to Romania? What are you expecting to see?
Nothing. I think the way to travel is always just to go and put yourself in the place. You know, just go put yourself there, see what encounters you have, see what images strike you. You can't go with expectations. You have to go tabula rasa. Go as a blank slate and see what happens to you.